it becomes necessary to give him the fedora. I'd love to do another Indiana Jones. What I'd like to do is share the opportunities that that new character presents in exploring the relationship between those two characters, much in the way that the whole enterprise was reinvigorated by bringing Sean in as my father.
Few stars have bridged generations quite like Harrison Ford. From the swaggering charm of Han Solo to the whip-cracking heroics of Indiana Jones, his face defines entire eras of moviegoing. Yet for all his fame, Ford remains almost allergic to sentimentality. He avoids the spotlight, sidesteps praise, and rarely names personal favorites.
With great enthusiasm, I called up the producers and I said, "This is great. I can't wait to get blah, blah, blah. And what a great part. Why don't we see if we can get..."
When asked to choose the films that shaped him, he usually shrugs, until pressed. Then, with that half grin and dry humor, he'll quietly mention a handful of titles that made him believe in storytelling or left an emotional scar that never faded. At 83, Ford's reflections are surprisingly modest. He doesn't rattle off his biggest box office hits, nor does he speak in self-congratulation.
My questions about it were many. Why am I wearing a leather jacket in the jungle? Isn't it hot here? Why am I carrying a whip? What am I going to do with a whip? Are you going to whip people?
Instead, he talks about moral courage, flawed men, and stories that reveal something essential about human nature. These 6 films, some that inspired him, some that he lived through, map a career defined by integrity and restraint. From courtroom morality to sci-fi noir, from jungle obsession to baseball history, each one uncovers another layer of the man behind the legend.
And the hat, well, it's an evocation of a time, a period, you know, a reflection of movies past. Oh, okay. I said okay, and that makes it my own.
So, let's count down Harrison Ford's 6 favorite films as revealed through interviews, conversations, and moments where his guard finally dropped. Number 6, Air Force One, 1997. In 1997, audiences discovered that Harrison Ford didn't need a whip or a blaster to save the day. He only needed a plane. Air Force One turned the image of a mild-mannered American president into something closer to a battlefield commander. And Ford made it utterly believable.
Actually, it was very easy for me because of the fact that almost all of my scenes were confined to a set. There were no weather delays. The set was largely pre-lit.
He played President James Marshall, a man who delivers a stirring speech in Moscow condemning terrorism, then boards the presidential jet, only for terrorists disguised as journalists to hijack it mid-flight. When the villains demand the release of a captured dictator, Marshall refuses to abandon his family or his staff. Instead, he hides below deck and begins methodically taking the plane back, one hostage at a time. Every punch, crawl, and whispered radio call feels earned. Ford's real-life experience as a licensed pilot gives each action scene an edge of authenticity. The final showdown, where he hurls the terrorist leader out the rear hatch with the immortal command, "Get off my plane!" instantly became one of cinema's great one-liners. Ford later laughed about how that line followed him everywhere. In a People magazine interview, he joked that he still quotes it while flying his own aircraft.
It wasn't important for me to hang up the hat, but literally, it is my last Indiana Jones movie. I'm not to be tempted to do another. And I wanted it to
Even President Bill Clinton reportedly told him, "You make a kick-ass president." For Ford, the role represented something deeper than macho spectacle. It was a portrait of leadership under pressure. "He's not a superhero," he said in promotion at the time. "He's a guy doing his duty, even when it's terrifying." What's fascinating is how Ford balanced vulnerability with resolve. Unlike many action heroes, Marshall bleeds, hesitates, and makes mistakes. He's frightened, but his moral compass never wavers. The film, directed by Wolfgang Peterson, channels the same themes that run through Ford's favorite stories. Ordinary people facing extraordinary circumstances and discovering who they really are when the mask of safety is torn away.
Taking advantage of the Secret Service's plan to evacuate him from the airplane.
The movie earned more than $300 million worldwide, but its legacy lives mostly in Ford's performance. Equal parts father, soldier, and statesman. Over 2 decades later, it still plays on television as comfort food for anyone who likes their politics with a dose of courage and a clenched jaw. Do you enjoy seeing leaders take matters into their own hands, or does that idea belong purely to the movies?
And shooting the air stunts of this film, that was the biggest challenge and the most risky.
The Air Force has been generous with their advisors.
They provided us with numerous aircraft, with F-15s, with starfighters, with Humvees, emergency vehicles.
And be honest, have you ever shouted, "Get off my plane," at anything in your life? Number 5-42, 2013. By the time Harrison Ford signed on for 42, he was long past proving himself as a movie star. But this film gave him something different, a chance to step outside his usual hero roles and honor a real one. 42 tells the story of Jackie Robinson, the first black player to break Major League Baseball's color barrier in 1947. Ford plays Branch Rickey, the cigar-chomping Brooklyn Dodgers executive who had the courage and foresight to sign Robinson despite fierce resistance from fans, players, and the press.
I think young people especially should understand what it felt like at that time to go through what Jackie Robinson went through.
I had a really good time doing this. I actually had a couple scenes one scene where I chased a train and they had to speed the train up because I was too fast for the train.
Ricky isn't portrayed as a saint. He's gruff, sharp-tongued, and calculating, yet guided by a moral conviction that baseball and America needed to change. Ford transforms under layers of makeup and gravel voice bravado, but what lingers is the humanity beneath. When Ricky tells Robinson, "I'm looking for a ball player with guts enough not to fight back," it's one of the most powerful scenes of Ford's later career. In interviews, Ford explained that he actively pursued the role.
I hope they understand the part that Jackie Robinson played in changing race relations in this country. If it hadn't happened in baseball, if the color barrier hadn't been broken in baseball, I think it would have taken much longer for the civil rights movement to get traction.
He said he felt an obligation to tell this story because it mattered. Because it wasn't just about baseball, but about moral courage. He told Entertainment Weekly that Branch Rickey's vision of justice resonated with him deeply, and that the character's wit and determination reminded him of the moral authority he admired in films like To Kill a Mockingbird.
He had to suffer real indignity, and he did it. He did it with courage and conviction and understanding of what lay at the other end of the road.
At 70, Ford approached Ricky not as an old man playing wise, but as a man trying to do what's right in an unjust world. His performance was subtle and lived in, filled with hesitation, frustration, and pride.
Audio tapes of his voice and the way he delivered. He's a wonderfully colorful speaker. He might well have been a great lay preacher or a trial lawyer. And he was very clear about morality.
Critics praised how completely he disappeared into the part, something Ford himself shrugged off, saying simply, "I wanted to get it right." 42 isn't just a sports movie, it's a portrait of quiet heroism, of how change begins not with speeches, but with choices.
And I was playing like any kid, and nothing happened, okay? And at that point in time, Jackie became my hero, my role model.
Ford's Ricky doesn't swing a bat or steal a base. He uses the power he has to open a door that others have slammed shut for generations. That message clearly appealed to Ford's sensibilities. Characters who act decisively when conscience demands it, even at personal cost. For many viewers, Seeing Ford embody such a historical figure was a revelation. After decades of action and adventure, here was the same intensity turned inward. The restless drive of Indiana Jones, now channeled into a man fighting an invisible enemy, bigotry. So while 42 may not be the most quoted film in Ford's resume, it represents something greater. It's a story about integrity, conviction, and doing the right thing when no one else will. And that, for Harrison Ford, has always been the truest form of heroism. What does Branch Rickey's partnership with Jackie Robinson teach us about courage and allyship? How do films like 42 remind us that real change begins with character? Number 4, The Mosquito Coast, 1986. There's a reason Harrison Ford keeps returning to the Mosquito Coast when asked about his favorite performances. It's not his most popular movie, nor his most financially successful, but it's the one that most challenged him as an actor and as a person. Released in 1986 and directed by Peter Weir, the film tells the story of Allie Fox, a brilliant but obsessive inventor who becomes disillusioned with American consumerism.
He's a man of enormous intelligence, energy. He has a very strong moral point of view. There's a lot to commend him. As well, there's these other complications to his character. He's a pain in the ass. He's an ideologue. He's difficult with his family. But that's what's interesting, is the complexity.
Convinced that modern society is rotten to the core, he uproots his family and drags them to the jungles of Central America to build a utopian paradise of his own design. At first, Allie's confidence is magnetic. He's innovative, passionate, and unafraid to defy convention. But as his dream becomes more extreme, his vision curdles into delusion. He builds a giant ice-making machine in the middle of the jungle, clashes with missionaries, alienates his family, and ultimately destroys everything he was trying to save. Ford plays him with frightening conviction. A man so convinced of his genius that he can't see his own madness.
The film is out of control. I don't mean personally I overwhelmed, but if the human part of the story is lost, or there is an emotional relationship between the audience and characters in the film, you're missing something that's very important in films. People don't go to films to watch special effects, finally. They go to have an emotional relationship.
In interviews, Ford has described Allie Fox as his favorite role precisely because it scared him. He told Entertainment Weekly that The Mosquito Coast was the best script he'd read since Witness, and that even though it failed at the box office, he never regretted making it. It was full of powerful emotions, he said. It didn't earn its money back, but I'm glad I did it. That line alone sums up Ford's approach to art. He values truth over commercial success. The film also gave him a rare chance to play against type. Allie Fox isn't heroic. He's stubborn, volatile, and often cruel. Yet Ford found empathy in him. He's not wrong about everything, he once remarked. He just can't stop himself. That insight adds a tragic layer to a character who might otherwise have been a caricature. Working again with director Peter Weir, who had guided him through Witness, Ford created a portrait of obsession that feels almost Shakespearean. Every time Fox doubles down, the jungle itself seems to close in tighter. The oppressive heat, the dense greenery, and the hum of insects amplify the claustrophobia of a man trapped by his own ideals. For Ford, this wasn't just another adventure. It was a moral study. It asked whether genius can survive without humility, and whether idealism without compassion becomes tyranny. Those questions clearly fascinated him. And when he revisited the story decades later as an executive producer on the Apple TV adaptation, it was proof that The Mosquito Coast never left him.
Things quite often. And the funny thing about the hoop is you have to be very careful when you sit down, because sometimes you've got this round thing like this, right? And if you're not careful, you sit down and the whole thing goes straight up like.
Do you see Allie Fox as a visionary rebelling against a broken system, or as a warning about the dangers of obsession? What do you think The Mosquito Coast says about the cost of chasing perfection? Number 3, Raiders of the Lost Ark, 1981. Few roles in cinema history are as tightly bound to an actor as Indiana Jones is to Harrison Ford. When Raiders of the Lost Ark premiered in 1981, audiences immediately recognized something special. A hero who wasn't a superhero. He was brilliant but flawed, daring but weary, confident but perpetually bruised. That balance of swagger and self-deprecation became Ford's trademark, and it all began here. The film, directed by Steven Spielberg and produced by George Lucas, reimagined the serial adventures of the 1930s for a new generation.
Paul Friedman, my God, you know, I just had one of the best times of my entire life working on that picture. And it was like recreating a Saturday matinee. It was a cliffhanger. So it was all those films I used to see when I was 8 and 9 years old, the revivals of all the black and white Republic serials. And suddenly I had a chance to make a serial in widescreen and in Technicolor. It was very exciting.
Indiana Jones, an archaeologist and professor, is hired by U.S. intelligence to track down the Ark of the Covenant before the Nazis can seize it. His journey takes him through Nepal, Cairo, and the Egyptian desert, dodging traps, snakes, and double-crossing rivals. What made Raiders endure wasn't just its action, but its tone. It treated peril with humor and intelligence. In interviews, Ford has admitted that Raiders remains one of the films closest to his heart. He especially loves a single line that, for him, sums up not just Indiana Jones, but perhaps his own career. "It's not the years, honey, it's the mileage." He once told BuzzFeed that it was his favorite line of dialogue out of everything he's ever said on screen. It captures the soul of a man who's been through hell but still stands tall, not polished, but resilient.
Things that makes Indiana Jones attractive is his lack of respect for authority. Always makes a good movie hero. He's a bit of a scoundrel from time to time, but
Ford understood Indiana Jones in a way few actors understand their alter egos. He described him as a guy who gets in over his head, takes his lumps, and keeps moving. That combination of competence and vulnerability made the character accessible. He wasn't a distant hero. He was the man who fell, groaned, and got up again. Filming Raiders wasn't easy. The production was grueling. Weeks of desert heat, stunts performed without doubles, and constant risk of injury. Ford famously insisted on doing most of his own action scenes, including the truck chase and the iconic fight against a Nazi mechanic near a spinning propeller. The result was authenticity. You could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the dirt under his nails. It wasn't just acting, it was endurance. Looking back, Ford has said that what he loves most about Raiders is that it never condescends to the audience. It's smart fun, he explained. It's adventure with wit and craft. That sense of intelligence beneath the spectacle mirrors Ford's own taste in cinema. Stories that entertain while hinting at something deeper.
I can't put it into words, Michael. It's just, it translates into permission to continue. You know?
Wow. Well, you're so obviously moved by that, and of course you have permission to continue, but what's not going to continue is Indiana Jones. What are you going to miss about him?
Nothing. We did it.
More than 40 years later, Indiana Jones remains one of the most enduring characters in movie history. Ford has returned to him 5 times, but Raiders is where the myth was born, and it still stands as a benchmark for every action film that followed. What's your favorite Indiana Jones moment? The rolling boulder, the whip crack, or the wry smile after barely surviving? And do you think Raiders of the Lost Ark remains the greatest adventure movie ever made? Number 2, Blade Runner, 1982. When Blade Runner was released in 1982, audiences didn't quite know what to make of it. Too bleak for mainstream crowds, too cerebral for standard sci-fi, it stumbled at the box office but slowly became one of the most influential films ever made. For Harrison Ford, it remains one of his most complex experiences. a movie he both fought with and grew to deeply respect. Directed by Ridley Scott, Blade Runner paints a dystopian vision of Los Angeles in the year 2019. The city is a neon-soaked sprawl where it's always raining, and the line between humans and machines has blurred.
Interesting and exciting. I just haven't had the time. Never done that. Okay. That granted, the film interested me because of.
Ford plays Rick Deckard, a weary ex-cop hired to hunt down replicants, artificial beings designed for slave labor who have escaped from off-world colonies. As he tracks them through the city's alleys and rooftops, he meets Rachel, a replicant who doesn't know she isn't human, and his mission begins to unravel.
Extraordinary position.
I don't I'm doing any more than, Planet Raiders 2 was shooting in mid-'83 with Steven Spielberg again directing. And the plans for the third one would not commence until the second one proves to be viable.
Ford has often said that the moral ambiguity of Blade Runner fascinated him, even if the production itself was grueling. He and Ridley Scott clashed repeatedly over tone and character motivation, but years later, Ford admitted that the tension may have worked in the film's favor.
Particular look to it all. We had, I think, 50 nights of work on Backlot of Warner Brothers. Cold, rainy often. It was a tough shoot.
Deckard isn't a confident hero. He's a man lost in his own uncertainty, which is exactly how Ford felt during filming. There was a struggle to find the balance, he once said, and that struggle ended up on screen. What Ford never liked, however, was the narration added to the theatrical release. A studio-mandated voiceover meant to clarify the story for audiences. "I'd take any cut that didn't have the voiceover," he told reporters decades later, insisting that it drained the mystery out of the film. For him, silence and atmosphere were part of the storytelling. The audience didn't need explanations, just time to feel. That idea, trusting viewers to think for themselves, aligns with the artistic integrity that Ford respects most in cinema. That ambiguity continues to spark debate today. Is Rick Deckard himself a replicant? Ford has said that he always played him as human, while Ridley Scott insists he is not. Ford once joked, "That's the director's opinion. I think the character's humanity lies in his uncertainty." That statement captures why Blade Runner endures. It's a film that doesn't offer answers, only reflection. For Ford, it's proof that the most powerful movies don't tell us what to think. They make us question who we are.
We're making another Blade Runner, and we want you to be in it. What was your reaction?
So what?
He's right. Oh, I needed that. I've warmed up.
Do you believe Deckard is human, replicant, or something in between? And how does Blade Runner's vision of humanity resonate with the world we live in today? Number 1. To Kill a Mockingbird, 1962. When Harrison Ford talks about the movies that shaped him, To Kill a Mockingbird comes up again and again. It's not an action film, a spectacle, or a box office juggernaut. It's a quiet, deeply human story about integrity, empathy, and courage. Qualities that have defined Ford's best performances and, by his own admission, his worldview. Based on Harper Lee's Pulitzer Prize-winning novel, To Kill a Mockingbird unfolds in Depression-era Alabama, where lawyer Atticus Finch defends Tom Robinson, a black man falsely accused of raping a white woman.
Would be Kill a Mockingbird. I think it had all of the elements of a great film, and it had a moral sort of. It had such a strong moral register. I think that's why I would say it's very nearly my favorite film. I think Peck was remarkable.
The story is seen through the eyes of Atticus's young daughter Scout, whose innocence becomes the lens through which we witness prejudice, fear, and moral awakening. Gregory Peck's portrayal of Atticus became a symbol of decency and moral clarity for generations. And for Harrison Ford, it was transformative. In an interview with the American Film Institute, Ford admitted that if he were forced to choose a single film that truly moved him, To Kill a Mockingbird would be it. He described it as a film with all the elements of greatness: an honest script, sincere performances, and above all, a strong moral register. "It's very nearly my favorite film," he said, emphasizing how the story's quiet power stayed with him long after the credits rolled. For Ford, Gregory Peck's performance represented something he strives for as an actor: truth without showmanship. He once remarked that Peck brought truth and vivid storytelling without appearing to act. That restraint, that natural dignity, became a model for Ford's own screen presence. Whether playing Han Solo, Indiana Jones, or President Marshall, Ford always grounds his characters in moral conviction rather than theatrics. But To Kill a Mockingbird isn't just about Atticus Finch's heroism. It's about what happens when moral courage collides with societal hatred. Ford has spoken about how the film's sense of justice resonated with him during his youth, the way it framed decency not as a grand gesture, but as quiet perseverance in the face of ignorance. "It's not just about racism," he once said. "It's about the choices people make when they know what's right, but fear the cost of doing it." That idea, the cost of doing what's right, runs through Ford's entire career. From Han Solo's reluctant compassion to Rick Deckard's internal conflict, his characters are often men torn between survival and conscience. It's no coincidence that To Kill a Mockingbird sits at the top of his list. It's not only a story about justice, it's about the struggle to remain human when the world around you demands compromise.
You have to get, it's not a thick skin as much as it is, you just have to not care anymore. Right. I was in Dumb and Dumber, you know? I mean, there's... Twice.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Twice.
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah,
Thank you.
Sure.
The film's final scene, in which Scout walks Boo Radley home and says, "Atticus was right. You never really know a man until you stand in his shoes and walk around in them," could just as easily describe Ford's philosophy of acting. Every role, every performance is an attempt to walk in someone else's shoes, to understand rather than judge. What does To Kill a Mockingbird mean to you today? Does its moral message still resonate as powerfully as it did when you first saw it? These choices tell us as much about the man as the actor. Ford has never been one to chase trends or inflate his legend. He prefers quiet integrity to celebrity polish, the same quality he admired in Gregory Peck's Atticus Finch. When he praises a movie, it's not because it's stylish or popular, but because it speaks to something enduring. To Kill a Mockingbird reminded him that cinema could change the way people see morality. Raiders of the Lost Ark proved that intelligence and humor could coexist with adventure. Blade Runner challenged him and his audience to confront what it means to be human. Which of Ford's 6 selections speaks most to you? Do you find yourself drawn to his moral choices, his sense of realism, or his quiet defiance? Share your thoughts below, and tell us which Harrison Ford performance defines him best in your eyes. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us next time as we explore the favorite films of another cinematic legend.